It was never my intention to witness it. It happened purely by chance. As I strolled past the sofa, I cast a fleeting glance its way. Yet once the images danced before my eyes, they became an indelible part of my thoughts. It was an ordinary afternoon. One of those languid days when time seems to stretch endlessly. As I made my way to my stepson Stephen's room, a stack of fresh towels in hand, I sought to distract myself from the troubles that loomed with my husband Richard. At the age of 25, Stephen lounged on the sofa, his gaze fixed on his phone as if time itself had come to a standstill. As I strolled past, a flicker on his screen drew my attention without a second thought. My gaze fell downward. Initially, I found myself puzzled by the scene unfolding before me. And then it all came together. His phone displayed images of women in alluring attire, while a brief video played silently in the background. It was clear what it was, and my breath hitched in my throat in amament of near calamity. The towels nearly slipped from my grasp. Stephen must have sensed my presence, for he spun around quickly, his cheeks flushing a deep crimson. In a swift motion, he ached for his phone, eager to silence it. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, allowing me to weave more captivating true tales for you, just like this one. Be sure to stay with this video all the way to the end. And just like the video, this tale is bound to be utterly captivating. Your support means the world. A simple tap on the like button can make a difference, Carol. He faltered, his voice trembling. Oh, I never intended for you to catch a glimpse of that. My sincerest apologies. I quickly averted my gaze, my cheeks aflame. As I turned to leave, a thrill surged through my heart. The images lingered in my mind, refusing to fade away, and I sensed that the bond we shared would forever be altered. The remainder of the day lingered with an unshakable weight. The images, the brief clip, all of it replayed in my mind, like a vivid tale waiting to be told. The manner in which Stephen responded, his hurried attempt to silence his phone, and the way he stumbled over my name lingered in my mind even longer. I repeatedly reassured myself that it was nothing to worry about. He's a young man, just a part of life's unfolding narrative, nothing to fret over yet. It wasn't the images themselves that troubled me. There lingered an uncomfortable sensation between us, a tension that remained unvoiced. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we found ourselves at the dinner table, just the two of us, enveloped in the warmth of the moment. As the hours stretched on, Richard remained engrossed in his work, leaving Stephen and me to navigate the stillness that hung in the air between us. I endeavored to spark a dialogue. Have you received any word from the jobs you applied for? I inquired, attempting to keep my tone light. Stephen lifted his gaze from his plate, a hint of discomfort flickering across his face. Not yet, still waiting, he murmured softly. I nodded, gently maneuvering my food across the plate, lost in thought. In due time, all will unfold as it should. Patience is the key to the journey ahead, perhaps, he murmured as he absent-mindedly pushed a piece of chicken around with his fork. The dialogue came to a halt, and I observed him deliberately steering clear of my gaze. As dawn broke, I rose with the sun, resolute in my quest to leave the previous day behind. As I embarked on the task of cleaning the house, I poured my energy into the work, determined to keep my hands busy and my mind engaged. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, I found myself vacuuming close to the sofa, every spot where it had all unfolded. Stephen strolled in, his hair still glistening from the shower, cradling a steaming cup of coffee in his hands. He came to a halt the moment his eyes met. Good morning, he uttered with a measured tone. Morning, I replied. My gaze fixed elsewhere. He lingered for a moment, as if words were poised on the tip of his tongue, waiting for the right moment to be spoken. At last, he began to share the tale of yesterday. I stood still, the hum of the vacuum enveloping the stillness of the room. No need to explain, I replied swiftly, switching off the vacuum and rising to my full height. I didn't want you to see that, he said, his face flushing an even deeper shade of crimson. It's all right, I replied, gesturing dismissively. Let's just move on from this. He nodded, yet his stance suggested a lingering uncertainty in the days that followed. We tread lightly in each other's presence, avoiding the unspoken shadows of what had transpired. Yet the uncomfortable sensation lingered just beneath the surface. There were moments when I caught him stealing glances in my direction, his gaze lingering just a heartbeat longer than it should have, before he swiftly averted his eyes, as if the act itself was a secret he was desperate to keep. I took the same path. There were moments when I would observe him discovering details I had previously overlooked. The tension in his jaw Ash focused the air of confidence that surrounded him with each step he took. The air thickened with unspoken words, a palpable tension weaving itself between us lingering in silence one afternoon, while Richard was off on a business trip. Stephen and I found ourselves alone at home. As I stood in the kitchen, preparing a warm cup of tea, he entered. "The room care for a taste?" I inquired. Gesturing towards the kettle, "Of course," he replied casually, leaning against the counter. We lingered in silence as he poured the tea, the only sound being the gentle patter of rain against the windows. At last he found his voice. Carolee began to waver in his confidence. A wish for our connection to remain smooth and comfortable. As I raised my gaze, astonishment washed over me. "They're not strange," I exclaimed a bit too quickly. He offered a faint melancholic smile. "Indeed they are. And I must take responsibility for that. It's not your fault," I reassured him immediately. It was a twist of fate, yet he murmured gently, "I hope you won't judge me." Harshly, I placed the mugs gently on the counter, then turned to meet his gaze. "Stephen," I spoke softly, "I hold no ill thoughts of you." We exchanged glances, the atmosphere around us heavy with the weight of unvoiced thoughts. He stepped closer, his gaze probing. "Into my own, Carol," he murmured. I interrupted him before he could complete his thoughts. "Stephen," I declared with conviction, taking step back, his face flushed with a deep crimson hue. "Apologies," but in that moment he began to speak, then abruptly turned and exited the kitchen, leaving me to wrestle with my own thoughts on that. Night slumber eluded me. I found myself revisiting the events that unfolded in the kitchen, turning them over in my mind like a cherished tale, each detail vivid and alive. As the clock struck midnight, I slipped out of bed, yearning for a soothing cup of chamomile tea. To ease my restless mind, as I stepped into the living room, I was taken back to see Stephen there, the gentle glow of the TV casting a warm light around him. "You're up, late," I murmured softly, resting against the doorway. He glanced my way, his expression gentle, sleep eluding us both. After a brief moment of uncertainty, I made my way to the other side of the sofa and settled in, well lingered in silence for a time, the only sound being the soft murmur of the television. After a few moments, Stephen began to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you ever feel stuck?" Hesked. I looked at him, taken aback by the question. "What do you mean?" I asked. Ash replied, "Like your life isn't truly yours." "As if you were merely following a script," I nodded slowly. "Indeed," I replied, "I often feel that way." And he turned to me, his expression grave. "What do you do about it?" I pondered for a moment. I found myself at a loss for words. I confessed I often reflect on the little joys that bring me happiness, the subtle moments that light up my day, held it out, a soft, nearly melancholic chuckle expressing a longing to understand their significance for him. Before I could utter a word, he drew nearer, his expression becoming gentler. "Carol," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. I paused, my breath caught in my throat, suspended in time, as I remained utterly still with a gentle motion. I extended my hand and softly brushed against his, a fleeting connection that spoke volumes. A peculiar sensation coursed through me, yet as swiftly withdrew my hand. "We cannot," I whispered. "I understand," he murmured in reply. Yet neither of us stirred. As dawn broke, the skies darkened, and a tempest unleashed its fury, drenching the land in relentless rain and howling winds. With Richard off on his journey, it was just Stephen and me braving the storm together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the power flickered and vanished, shrouding the house in an enveloping darkness. As I kindled a few candles in the living room, their flickering glow cast elongated shadows that danced upon the walls. Stephen descended the stairs, his phone in hand. "The power's out everywhere," he remarked. Settling onto the sofa numbers, I remarked, perched in the chair opposite him. "It seems we must find joy in the timeless traditions of yesteryear." He wore a smile. "Do you have any board games to share, perhaps?" I replied, chuckling softly. We found ourselves gathered around the coffee table, engaged in a lively game of Scrabble. The candlelight danced around us, casting playful shadows as we teased one another about our word selections. "Sans not a word," I said, laughter bubbling up as I set my tiles aside. "Indeed," he contended. Seek it out, how might I proceed? The internet's down. It playfully remarked. Then you'll just have to trust me, he said, a playful grin spreading across his face. His grin spread like wildfire, and for a fleeting moment the tempest outside faded from my mind, yet as we engaged in our game, the atmosphere shifted ever so slightly. As our hands grazed the surface of the tiles, a spark ignited within me, revealing the unspoken connection that lingered in the air. He was close as the final moments of the game faded into memory. I began to gather the tiles. But then Stephen's hand gently halted my movements. Carol, he whispered. Gently I gazed up at him. The atmosphere surrounding us was heavy with unexpressed emotions, just as I was about to speak. He reached over the table and pressed his lips against mine. It began as a gentle kiss, a tender inquiry as if he sought consent. Yet when it stayed, it grew more profound. At last the strain that had lingered between us over. The past few days shattered. As we separated, I gazed at him, my heart racing wildly. This is wild, I murmured. Perhaps, he replied, his tone unwavering. Yet, it doesn't seem amiss. From that night onward, the world transformed in way unimaginable. We had ventured beyond a threshold, and retreat was no longer an option in the beginning. It was the little moments of fleeting kiss in the kitchen, a gentle brush of fingers, when no one else was around in the vicinity. Yet as time unfolded, our courage grew stronger. One afternoon, as Richard toiled away at work, having been away from home for several days, Stephen stumbled upon me in the laundry room diligently folding clothes. He lingered in the doorway for a moment, simply observing me. Do you need any help? He inquired, a playful glint in his eye. Do you truly know the art of folding a shirt? I inquired, arching my eyebrow with curiosity. He flashed a smile. Not entirely. Genuine, but I picked things up quickly. As he drew nearer, the moment his hand brushed against mine, I lifted my gaze. The gaze he cast upon me sent a chill racing down my spine. Carol, he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. I let him lean in, and soon the laundry faded away as we shared a kiss. It didn't take long for others to sense that something had changed. Susan, me closest companion, was the first to speak up one morning. She arrived for coffee, her gaze fixed on me intently as we settled into the kitchen. You seem different, she remarked, her voice carrying a hint of curiosity, inquisitive. In what way? I inquired, attempting to brush it aside with a chuckle. I don't know, she said, tilting her head, a hint of mystery dancing in her voice, more joyful. I simply shrugged. Perhaps. I've simply found a more restful slumber. Yet Susan remained unconvinced by my words. Indeed, whatever it may be, continue on with it. How wonderful it is to witness your smile. I returned her smile, yet her words lingered in my mind long after she had gone. Then, like a twist in a tale, Stephen's ex-girlfriend Melissa reappeared, adding layers of complexity to the unfolding drama. She arrived at the house unannounced, her hair immaculate and her smile a mere facade. Greetings, Stephen, she said with a warm smile. It's been ages since we last met. I observed from the hallway as Stephen welcomed her, his demeanor tied with tension. Melissa, he spoke, his tone measured and deliberate. What brings you to this place? I thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing, she said, gliding past him into the living room. Stephen cast a fleeting, remorseful glance my way before you trailed after. Her eye remained hidden, attuned to the exchange between them. So you find yourself residing here now? Melissa inquired, her tone airy yet tinged with a sharpness. How is that unfolding? It's fine, Stephen replied. Indeed, she remarked. Once upon a time, this place was the source of your disdain. What transformed as silence lingered in the air? A soft chuckle escaped Melissa's lips, a gentle ripple of amusement in the stillness. Fascinating. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows in the living room, the air between Stephen and me crackled with unspoken words and palpable tension. At last I spoke. Of Melissa's troubles I understand here. Plied, his jaw clenched. Yet she remains inactive. She's merely seeking to uncover the truth. Are you certain? I inquired. He paused for a moment, then gave a slight nod. Indeed, her words flow like a river, but they lack substance. Yet his voice lacked a certain assurance, yet his uncertainty hung like a shadow weaving through the atmosphere, and for the first time I truly sensed the gravity of what we were putting on the line. Following Melissa's visit, Stephen and I became even more vigilant. Yet The bond we shared only deepened with time. The shroud of secrecy added an exhilarating thrill to the unfolding events, and our cherished moments grew deeper. Bold one afternoon, as Richard toiled away at the office and Melissa remained absent once more, Stephen stumbled upon me tending to the gardenias. I pruned the wild rose bushes. I sought refuge from the tumult that surrounded me, hoping to find a moment of peace amidst the disorder. "Need a hand?" he inquired casually, leaning against the fence. A soft wind whispers through the foliage surrounding him. I cast a fleeting look in his direction. The sun cast its warm glow, prompting him to squint just a bit, and there were glistening droplets of perspiration on his forehead from the heat. "Are you familiar with the art of gardening?" inquired a smile gracing my lips, not a clue. He confessed with a playful smile. Chuckled a smile spreading across my face as I shook my head in disbelief. "In that case, your presence is of no assistance." Here he stepped closer, his tone shifting, deepening with gravity. "There are certainly other avenues I can explore to offer my assistance." The lively exchange swiftly evolved into a deeper, more intense connection. He gently lifted the shears from my grasp, his fingers grazing against mine in a fleeting moment of connection. The garden, adorned with towering hedges and lush vines, enveloped us in a cocoon of solitude as if we were the only souls in existence. We seized the opportunity, yet as I became enveloped in the experience, a shadow of concern lingered in the background, whispering doubts about our actions. A week later, Melissa returned. Her unexpected arrival took both Stephen and me by surprise. As I stepped out of the shower, the sound of a knock echoed through the air, signaling that it was Stephen's turn to greet the unexpected visitor at the door. I could hear her voice from upstairs, piercing and full of inquiry. "You've been behaving quite oddly of late," she remarked. "What unfolds before us? Nothing's happening." Stephen responded, his tone tinged with a hint of defensiveness. Truly, she uttered, her voice laced with uncertainty, and I meant to accept that as truth as I descended the stairs. Melissa's gaze sharpened, scrutinizing me from head to toe. "Ooh, greetings, Carol," she uttered with a gentle charm. "I had no idea you would be here. This is my sanctuary," I declared with a serene confidence. Her smile was a mere facade, lacking the warmth that should have sparkled in her eyes. Ah, how amusing it is that I let such a detail slip my mind. When she departed, Stephen and I lingered in the living room, enveloped in a profound silence. "She understands," I finally admitted. "She remains in the dark," Stephen asserted, though uncertainty lingered in his voice. "She has her doubts," I contended, "and that's nearly more troubling." In the midst of it, all my friend Susan began to delve deeper, her curiosity sparking a flurry of questions. One evening, she called her tone light and casual, yet there was an undercurrent of curiosity, as if she were probing for something deeper. "Would you care to join me for lunch tomorrow?" she inquired. "I cannot," I replied hastily. "There's an abundance of tasks awaiting my attention around the house." She took a moment, allowing silence to weave its magic before her words flowed once more. "It seems you've had quite a full schedule recently." Is all well in your world?" "Certainly," I replied, making an effort to maintain a sense of calm. "What could possibly make it otherwise?" "No reason," she said, yet I could sense the doubt lingering in her voice. "Adams, I find myself concerned for your well-being, and that's all there is to it." I assured her that all was well. Yet the exchange lingered in my mind, casting a shadow of discomfort on a Saturday night. Richard returned home from his latest business trip, arriving earlier than anyone had anticipated. As Stephen and I shared laughter in the kitchen, a bottle of wine between us. The sound of the front door creaking open caught our attention. My heart leaped into my throat at the sound of Richard's voice echoing, "Carol." Stephen's hand paused, hovering just before it could make contact with mine. His eyes widened, a wave of panic washing over him. "Hurry," he urged, swiftly returning the wine bottle to its cool resting place in the fridge. "Behave as you usually would." Richard strolled into the kitchen moments later, a bright smile lighting up his face as he embraced the warmth of home. "What unfolds within these walls?" he inquired, a smile gracing his lips, just reconnecting. I remarked, my tone perhaps a touch overly bright. Richard's gaze drifted to the 2 wine glasses resting on the counter, and with a subtle nod he acknowledged their presence. "It's heartwarming to witness the bond blossoming between you two." As he turned to leave the kitchen, a breath escaped. Mayonnaise I hadn't even known I was holding. Stephen cast his gaze upon me, and for a fleeting moment the dread of what might have transpired loomed large. "All that remains." The narrow escape left us both feeling tense, and it wasn't long before the tension began to surface. Stephen began to exhibit a stronger sense of ownership, and his temper flared with greater frequency on a tranquil evening. In the living room, he abruptly asked, "Why must we continue to tiptoe around?" His voice cut through the air with precision awe, "But you understand the reason behind it all." I responded, striving to maintain my composure, "We must keep this a secret from everyone, but I'm weary of concealing." He confessed, running a hand through his hair. With a heavy sigh, I felt the swell of my own frustration building within me. "This isn't simple for me either, Stephen, but we find ourselves without a choice." The tension lingered in the air, weaving its way through the fabric of the night, and I found myself pondering how much longer could maintain this delicate dance. Once upon a time, in a world filled with wonder and intrigue, there existed a tale waiting to unfold. It was Susan who ultimately drove us to our limits one afternoon. She appeared out of the blue, catching me by surprise as I was busy tidying the living room. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice carrying a weight of importance. "What's happening?" I inquired. Gently placed the feather duster aside, she paused a moment, of uncertainty hanging in the air before her words began to flow. "I sense there's a secret you're keeping, Carol, and I believe it holds significance, an intriguing connection involving Stephen. My heart began to race, a tempest of emotions swirling within me as I fought to maintain my composure. "What leads you to that conclusion? It's merely a sensation," she remarked, her gaze probing into mine. "You've changed in a way that's hard to ignore, and I can't help but notice the way Stephen gazes at you." I began to speak, to refuse it entirely, yet silence enveloped the moment. "Carol," she murmured gently, "if there's something happening, you must share it with me before the moment slips away." That evening I shared with Stephen the words that Susan had spoken. "We must tread with greater caution," I murmured, my voice trembling with unease. "Or perhaps we ought to simply share the truth," he declared, his voice laced with fury. "Are you out of your mind?" I lost my composure. "Can you imagine the impact that would have on this family?" "This isn't a family," he said, his voice laced with a deep sense of disappointment.